Okay. All right, so that should be all set. So we'll be having this recorded. So if any of you have to leave, but you want to make sure you are getting some of it that you missed, this will be recorded and available to you guys after the program is over. So if you have to leave, that's no worries. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna share my screen. We are back to fully in person, so I'm a little out of touch with Zoom. It's crazy how we went from being Zoom every day to not really quite as often. Okay. Can everyone see this okay? All right, so this is our puberty and reproductive health program. Again, this is definitely one of my favorite programs. I truly enjoy teaching this program. I tell the kids there is nothing to be embarrassed about when this program starts because I've been teaching it for so long. So there's nothing that can truly embarrass me at this point in my life. So I really try to get down to their level as best I can because I'm a person that comes in for the day, I'm there for an hour, and then I leave. So I try to make myself as comfortable as possible so this way the kids can be comfortable too and ask me questions. And before I forget, not only will I be teaching this program, but my coworker Tristan Beckford, who is not on currently today, he's currently out on leave. We're super excited for him. His wife just had their third child. So he's out on family leave right now, but he will be back and he will also be helping me teach the puberty program in April and May. So it'll be either myself or him. And he does a fantastic job. He is a great, great person to work with. So we open up this program just kind of giving the kids an overview, just letting them know that this program is how long it's going to be when we do questions. I definitely like to remind them in the beginning that they are in fifth grade, they are old, they are mature, so they should be able to handle themselves in a appropriate manner. So just letting them know that there is nothing to be embarrassed about in any of this content. So try to reserve all those giggles and things. I always give them a second. I give them a second to get the giggles out for a minute. And then from there, I say, all right, you guys got it out of your systems. Now we can be mature and get through everything. So definitely trying to make sure that they are listening and not getting too out of control. However, we do know this is a very sensitive topic for them. So big theme with all of this is just letting them know that this whole process that their bodies go through is completely normal. It is something that every single human being goes through on this planet. So it's nothing new. They are not the first kids ever to go through puberty. So I always like to have a little fun with the kids. So before I change the slide over, I always ask the kids, all right, we're going to talk about where puberty starts in the body. It starts in the brain. And they all kind of give a nice little, so that's always fun for me. So just letting them know how puberty begins in our brains, and just go over what puberty is, how it's hormones, and how they play a role in the growth and development of a human body, right? I always tell them on the average ages of puberty when it starts in this slide. So I let them know that puberty on average happens a little bit earlier for girls sometimes, can happen around 11 or 12 on average for girls. For boys, the average age is around 12 to 13. However, I do tell them that it can happen from anywhere from 8 all the way up to 14 or 15, just letting them know, especially kids who haven't had puberty yet. I don't want them getting all freaked out, being like, oh, it hasn't happened to me, and what's wrong with me? And same thing with the kids who have already started too. I don't want them going through thinking there's anything wrong with them at all, letting them know that this process is perfectly normal and it can happen earlier, can happen later for some kids, and that is all perfectly normal. All right, then we go through common changes they're going to see. So we talk about all the big ones that they're maybe a little more excited for, ones they're not so excited for. So we talk about getting taller, how our bodies are going to be growing, bones, muscles, body growth. I let them know, I have to break the ice and let them know that not everybody will grow. I see a lot of disappointed faces when I say that. A lot of these kids think they're going to be growing to be 6 foot tall. So we do have to remind them that it depends on the person. Some kids get tall, some kids do not. Completely depends on the person and genetics too. However, I do just let them know, be prepared. We will be getting taller and our bodies will be changing too. So not only will we grow, but also our bodies will develop. Next, we talk about body odor. So I just talk about why body odor happens. Our bodies are producing a lot more sweat, a lot more oils. All that sweat and oil mixes up with the bacteria on our skin and makes that funky kind of body odor smell, right? And letting them know that body odor happens if you get body odor. It's not you are not showering, you're not keeping yourself clean. Body odor happens whether we like it or not. And then we talk about what to do about body odor in the next slide. We talk about voice changes. So just letting them know our voices will get deeper, not only for the boys, but for the girls too. So letting the girls know your voices will also change. May not be quite as dramatic as some of those boys who go from Mickey Mouse to Darth Vader. However, your voices will get a little bit deeper. And during that voice change, your voices may crack, may get a little scratchy. We talk about hair growth. So letting them know that we get hair pretty much all over our bodies, hair arms, hair legs, armpits, and pubic hair as well. The boys always give themselves high fives when they find out that the mustaches and the beards be growing in pretty soon. But then they're horrified when I tell them they may get hair on their knuckles and their toes. They can't believe it that people can get hair on their toes. I always give my brother as a good example of that. He has weirdly hairy toes. We talk about mood swings, so letting them know that hormones in our bodies can be very intense during this puberty time. So if they find themselves going from really okay, calm to from suddenly really upset or angry out of nowhere, most likely going through a mood swing. And I do let them know, guys, if you're going through a mood swing, don't take it out on your parents. Don't be screaming at your families, beating up your siblings, crying in class. If you have to take a break, that is okay. So if you feel like your kids are getting a little intense, taking that break time, not a bad idea. Next, we talk about acne. So letting them know acne will be starting on their faces and other parts of their body too during puberty. It's due to the extra sweat and oils that our body is producing. Again, nothing wrong with them. It's not like they're not keeping themselves clean. It's just a part of this process. And I always tell these kids, like, acne is a normal part of life. It is a normal part of puberty. It means our bodies are healthy. All right. There's nothing wrong with acne. I still remember myself putting on my sister's way too orange foundation, the really moussey cake one, if you all remember that, caking it on my forehead and cheeks and looking absolutely insane to try to cover up every pimple that I had, and letting the kids know that they don't have to do that. It is okay to have acne, especially at this age. All right, so we go through what to do during puberty. So for things like acne, just letting them know a great place to start if we want to clear up some of that acne a little bit is things like washing our faces, all right? Practicing good hygiene, washing our face with face wash in the morning, at night. So if you feel like your kid is starting to develop those zits, those pimples, feel free to pick them up a face wash from the grocery store. This way they don't have to go to you. The ones in the grocery store, the cheaper ones, are usually the better ones anyway. They're much more simpler formulas and better for their skin at this age because they're still so young. They don't need any of the really high-end expensive stuff because they usually have harsher ingredients for their faces that they don't need at this age. So basic things like washing their faces, but I do let them know acne at their age is very stubborn, so don't get discouraged if acne is not going away. It can take a long time for a lot of people, still up into adulthood. Next, we talk about, so one thing I mentioned for girls, that your breasts will start to develop during puberty, and during this time, you may want to consider getting a bra. So I let them know that getting a bra shouldn't be anything we have to be embarrassed about, making it a good, positive experience, right? So making it a fun shopping trip, bringing their best friend, their older sister, their cool aunt, right? Making a day they can look forward to. And I try to remind them that bras are very, very expensive. So for your first bra, a simple sports bra is probably a good stepping stone before working up to those little more complicated bras too. Next, we discuss shaving. However, when we talk about shaving, the one part I emphasize the most during this is that shaving is optional. I know a lot of people do not shave due to cultural or religious reasons. Completely great. That's wonderful, fantastic. And I tell the kids that it is totally up to them whether they want to shave or not, right? So I tell the kids that we have hair in our bodies, we don't have hair in our bodies, we are still all beautiful people, hair or no hair. However, I do let them know that if they do decide to shave for the first time, to have an adult present. I don't want these kids after this program to have the idea of sneaking into your bathrooms, taking your razor, and trying it out on dry skin. That would cause a few tears. So I tell the kids, make sure you have an adult present. So if this is something you are interested in starting with your child, definitely approaching them, letting them know, hey, like, you learned about this at school today. Did you want to start shaving? Here, I'll show you how. Here are the tools to do so and the proper technique. Next, I tell the kids this is the most important part of the program, and that is deodorant. So I make sure they are all listening and are paying attention during this part. I travel to schools for a living, and I can tell you how rough some of these fifth grade classrooms can be. So deodorant is something I really try to emphasize, letting them know we wear deodorant every day to take care of that body odor. So I tell the kids, if you don't have a stick at home already, mention it to an adult. So if you guys are going to the grocery store, just picking them up a stick. This way they don't even have to go and ask you, because this is something a lot of kids can be very embarrassed about. And I do remind them that deodorant is not a substitute, excuse me, body spray is not a substitute for deodorant. Too many terrible PTSD memories of my high school classmates dousing themselves in cologne instead of deodorant, and just the foul smell and combination that would make. We talk about brushing teeth, so just keeping up with oral hygiene, brushing twice a day, and then showering too. I remind the kids, you guys are getting older, all right? You guys are sweating more, you're getting oilier, so we have to make sure we are keeping our bodies clean. I do tell them that washing hair is a different story. I know a lot of kids have very different and very specific hair care routines. So even if they don't wash their hair, make sure we're washing our bodies. So then this part, we switch it up. We start talking about the reproductive systems for both males and females. I do remind the kids we are talking about everybody today, and that it's really great to learn about everybody. I love to tell them, you will thank me one day. You may not thank me today, but you will thank me eventually for teaching you about everybody. Want good, educated people in the world. So before we kind of started off, we talked a little bit about cells. Just the responsibility of cells, how our bodies are made of cells, living things are made of cells, and we do bring up egg cells and sperm cells to be able to explain this process later on in the program. Then I do like to challenge the kids to a little trivia question. Feel free to answer yourselves. Most people do not know this. So I ask the kids, how many egg cells does a female have when she goes through puberty? So feel free to talk amongst yourselves, think about it. A lot of the kids get really, their minds are blown during this question. The answer it comes to is C, around 300,000. So when females are born, they have around 1 million, but by the time we get to puberty, there's around 300,000 on average, give or take. All right, so then we go through the female reproductive system. We try to keep this not too complicated. We are bombarding them with a lot of terminology during this program. So we try to do a little bit more of a simplified version. However, we still try to make sure we're covering all the major parts of the female reproductive system and going through what some of their basic jobs are. So we talk about the ovaries, how they hold those egg cells, talk about the fallopian tubes. I wish you all could be a fly on the wall when I tell the kids that when a woman is pregnant, the baby's in the uterus. Their mouths drop, their eyes bug out. It is my favorite moment in all the program. It's so funny. They cannot wrap their head around it. So they finally learn on this day that when a woman is pregnant, it is not in the stomach. Stomach's for digesting. It is in the uterus. All right, so then we go through the process of menstruation. So I like to tell the kids why menstruation happens, in addition to telling them how to handle it when it comes to feminine hygiene, cycle tracking, things like that. So I try not to, again, not trying to get too complicated with this. Obviously a lot of information we give during the day. So I just like to tell the kids that this is happening because basically our body's preparing for pregnancy one day, if that was to happen to us, if we wanted. I just tell the kids, it's kind of like when you join a sports team, all right? Is your first day of that team the championship game? No, you have some practice. So our bodies have this practice to prepare for this one day if this happened to us. So I just let them know that every single month the uterus gets very, very thick. And if a woman is not pregnant that month, the uterus will shed that inner lining. That is exactly how I talk about it, right? I talk about how our periods will arrive every single month. I like to have the kids try to guess how many days it lasts. They're usually pretty, like most boys and girls, they all pretty much know the answer. However, I do have to laugh when a couple kids raise their hands and say 1 day or 20 days. That always puts a smile on my face for the day. So I just tell the kids about how long it'll last and how it will repeat itself around every month. So I talk about things like tracking your period in a calendar. I also tell them that there are apps available on their phones or tablets. I know a lot of the kids have them at this age. So those can be very helpful for tracking your periods. This way they can prepare for it each month. They can prepare and know, okay, my period should be coming around next week. Maybe I should put an extra pad into my backpack so I'm prepared at school and I'm not all panicked. So I do make sure to have that discussion with them. So if this is something you wanted to help out your child with, definitely having one of those apps downloaded onto their tablets or phones can be very, very helpful for that. Very much. We talk about side effects of periods, so things like cramps, things like backaches, acne. I let them know that those cramps can be very unpleasant, especially when they first get them. Your body's totally getting used to it. It's a brand new process, so those cramps can be very intense. I would say the best way to help it is with things like Tylenol and Advil with the parent's permission, or things like heat. So using a heating pad, taking a warm shower, warm bath. We totally talk about very briefly. I just say for your period, you can use either pads or tampons. It is totally up to their preference and your preference as parents. I always just say it is whatever is more comfortable for you. I don't want these girls thinking they have to use one or the other. Totally up to their own preference.
Maggie, I want to butt in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So we have sometimes we're asked to separate the boys and the girls by school. You know, some schools will be like, oh, can we do them separately? You know, and kind of, you know, just talk about the girls to the girls and the boys to the boys. And so this is a great example of why we recommend what we really, I mean, if they insist, we'll do what they want. But one of the reasons why we don't. So I have 3 sons and they are college age. Well, one's graduated, but they're older. But I can remember it was so funny. My middle son, it was 4th grade. He comes running in the house off the bus, just beside himself. Tears, Mom, I can never get married. I'm never going to love anybody. I'm like, what, Gavin, what is going on? Lindsay told us all about that. The ladies, they bleed. And I can't, what? So he's horrified. So apparently, in their district, in fourth grade, the girls get the talk. And the girls get the talk and they get a little paper bag that has goodies in it. And the boys are all like, what's in the bag? What'd you talk about? And I don't know, I can't really say what the girls are told, like, don't tell, or I don't know what they're told. But all I know is that Lindsay couldn't wait to get on the bus and tell all the boys about it. Of course, why? I mean, why wouldn't she? So of course, then I had to give my own version of the talk, which again, as a mother of three boys, I thought I wouldn't have to do that, but you really do, because they need to understand, right? There are women in their life. They're going to be women in their life their whole life, and it's important to understand, these things that are happening to the bodies, of, even if it's not your body, so just bodies in general. So that's just my little story I love to throw in there, because it was hysterical.
No, you're
He's
100%
better
on the
now.
same.
He's better now. Fast forward, he's 21 and he has a girlfriend. He got over it. All right,
No,
carry
but
on.
it's 100% true though. I love the videos when they record people on the street and they're asking like, hey, like, do you
Oh,
know how a period works? And the amount of people who can't, not only men, but also women too, who just don't have no clue. So that's why we like to talk about it, age appropriate, but still giving them a little extra details. So they understand the why and how it's going to work and things like that.
right.
And
One
they
of my
get it.
favorites.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, one of my favorites is when they ask men, how many tampons do you use during a period? That's my favorite.
The
Go,
best
you
is
can
when
look
they
that
gave
one up
the
on
first,
TikTok.
the best is when they gave the female astronaut 100 tampons for, I think it was 1 week of space travel. 100 tampons. One of my favorite fun facts.
That'll do it. All
Anyway,
right,
during
sorry.
this, we do
Carry
like
on.
to remind the boys too, like just letting them know like that periods can be very uncomfortable for the girls. So being respectful to their female classmates when it comes to talk around their periods. If you see your female classmate bring like a little bag with them to the bathroom, don't say, what does she have? What's in there? Why does she get that? So just reminding them that, hey, like this is gonna be happening to the girls, can be very unpleasant. So just being respectful, right? And same thing goes for the boys when we talk about their section too, just having that mutual respect for each other in the classroom. Just want respectful kids. That's our goal. All right, so we like to get right in there with the boys. We don't mess around, we don't waste time because we are on a time crunch with this program. Those minutes go by very, very fast. So we go same thing with the boys. We just go through a couple of these parts. We don't go through every single one in the screen. Just a couple select ones that are important for the processes of sperm production. So such as the testicles, such as the epididymis. Fun word, try to say that 5 times fast. And just going over how boys will produce sperm cells versus girls will be born with those egg cells. So that's something I like to really emphasize. And then we do another challenge question for the boys, asking them how many sperm are made each month in a mature male. So putting them to the test. Again, feel free to think about this yourself. Again, surprises most people that the answer is D, around 12 billion. And at this point, the kids, their eyes are bugging. Some of them, their mouths have dropped to the floor. They cannot even wrap their head around. I can't wrap my head around 12 billion sperm cells when they are full grown. So this totally blows their mind. So again, my favorite part of the program. Right. So then we use that as a way to discuss how that's a lot of sperm cells. Their bodies at that time recognize that that's a lot, kind of maybe went a little overboard. So during puberty, something that happens to the boys are things like nocturnal emissions, or as many of you know it as wet dreams. So we just let the boys know that in the middle of the night, their bodies sometimes get rid of some of those extra sperm cells. So if they happen to wake up with a spot in their pajamas, on their sheets, that it is nothing they did wrong. It's not like they peed themselves, they didn't pee the bed. It just was a nocturnal emission that happened in the middle of the night. And this is something they have no control over, just like the girls cannot control having their periods. So this is not something they can't prevent. It's not like they can't not drink a soda before bed, or we don't want to do that either. And at this point, a lot of the boys, so many go, so that's what that is. Again, my favorite part of the program. And I just let them know to make sure that if this does happen to them, you're not dying, you're okay. Just take dirty clothes and put them into the laundry. Want them practicing good hygiene and cleaning up after themselves. All right, so then we talk about, why does this happen? Why do we go through this process? And the reason why is because if adults do want to have a baby one day, if they do, again, remind them that if you need those cells to do it. So we say this is a part of fertilization. That is when the one sperm and one egg come together to make one human. So just briefly, I try not to go too in detail with this. I just say if somebody does want to have a baby one day, that one sperm will combine with that one egg. It'll travel to the uterus where it will grow for a baby over the course of 9 months. And to just let parents know, I do not go into any remote details related to sexual intercourse in any way. If a question that's related to that comes up, I do just let the kids know. I say, hey, that's a really great question. That may be a better question for a parent at home, right? I just don't, I know that's a conversation a lot of parents want to have with their child at home, and we fully respect that. So if it ever does, like when we get to the Q&A, if it ever even leans towards that, or questions that are just maybe a little bit too mature for the kids to handle at this time, those are typically the answers that I give. So, and then it's up to you guys if that is a question you did want to answer, then it's available. If not, if you want to say, hey, you know what, we just want to acknowledge there are no bad questions. However, just wait a couple years and we'll have this talk again. So completely up to you guys if that is a conversation you wanted to have. But again, we just like to make sure that that is very clear, that we don't go into any details with that, right? So let me just go through how babies grow during this time. They do a lot of growing. Obviously, this is not set to scale, but just kind of giving them an idea of how babies grow. They are totally fascinated by babies, just letting you all know. This is the time where any question they've ever had about how pregnancy works, they want to ask it all. They are fascinated by pregnancy. They like, this is something that they love to hear about. So this is where a lot of questions start to pop up at this time. They are fascinated by the umbilical cord and how does the baby move. So I get a lot of questions during this time because they're just fascinated by pregnancy. It's really awesome to see. All right, and then we just talk about after 9 months goes by, well, it's time for the baby to be born. I do not go into any details with labor. Some kids will occasionally ask me about C-sections, and I'll answer that as honestly as I can. Again, keeping in mind their age, keeping it appropriate while still answering. I just talk about how it is very hard work, can last a very long time, and I always tell them that after today, when you guys get home, give somebody who's had a baby a hug. So if you guys get some extra hugs that day, you're welcome. That is why. All right, and then we end the program with just talking about twins. The question about twins always comes up, so that's why we always take a second to talk about it at the end, or else we would get 100 questions afterwards, and this way we can get a visual for it too. So we just talk about the differences between identicals and fraternals, how with identical it is one sperm and one egg that after that fertilized egg splits in two. And then with fraternal twins, it is two eggs and two sperm making two babies. Just basically siblings and mom is pregnant with at the same time. So we go through that. A lot of times they'll still ask about triplets. We're more than happy to answer. And then we reach the end. And then at this point, we take questions. Again, we are limited just by time. So we try to get to as many as we can. I have answered every question in the book when it comes to puberty. Once in a while, I'll get a new question, but mostly the major ones that I cover, again, babies, they want to know everything about how babies work. A lot of the girls, especially when I'm teaching, want to ask me more detailed questions about periods, like other things to use during their period, things like cramps, like more questions about why a period happens. I'll get a lot of questions about deodorant, so what types of deodorant they can use, things like that. Those are the most common ones, I would say. I always love the kids who ask me, how tall am I going to get? I'm just like, we'll have to see. We'll have to see in a couple of years, then I'll answer that question again. So I would say that those are the most common ones that I get. I'm trying to rack my brain if there's any more. Yeah, mostly I would say questions about periods, questions about deodorant, and questions of so many questions about babies. They're fascinated by it. So that is everything that we cover in our program. I am going to switch over because I just want to end with kind of going over some tips for you guys. So obviously this is covered in the classroom. However, we always encourage parents to continue this conversation at home. This way, if kids have questions later on, they can go to you. When we get to this point and when I'm done answering questions, I always tell the kids that if you still have questions today, please make sure we are asking adults. The last thing we want is for these kids to be running right to Google and Googling things that can be way too mature for their age. So we always tell them that if you still have questions, make sure you're asking adults who've been through this process who can give you the right answers. So people like you guys, your family at home, and then your teachers at school. So again, making yourself available to answer those questions can do such a world of difference, especially in today's day and age where they have tablets, they have phones, and we don't want them chatting on the bus either. I don't want these kids going to the older kids or talking about it around the younger kids. So just letting them know if you still have questions or you still want to talk about it, making sure we are going to parents. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment. I'm going to switch it over to my other set of slides very briefly. Give me one sec. Okay.
Maggie, can I just ask,
Yeah.
Adrian, can you There's a question about the program that the students get the next day, or there's another program after hours. Can you explain? Because ours is the one day we go in, we have the 45 minutes, like, and then 15 minutes for the questions. But then there is another program, and a parent was curious what that is.
Sure. The school-based discussions usually happen a few days after that discussion, where students are separated, um, males and females, with the school nurse or a PE teacher or a fifth grade teacher. And they really just continue the same conversation or message that you share, with additional questions or answers to anything that maybe they went home and talked to you about, and they still have like a lingering concern. Again, only if it's not appropriate, then they'll deflect that back to you. But it's kind of to place some closure on that discussion with someone from the school building.
Thank you. Yeah, and that gives them plenty of opportunities to ask people at school. But if they wanted to talk to you guys at home, I just want to give you guys a couple tips if this is something you did want to continue in the household. If not, obviously we do this program, and then the phys ed teachers will also do their programs. The kids will have ample time to ask questions, but if questions were to come up later or even beforehand, so just some tips on how to approach the subject if you decide to talk about it in the household. Number one, definitely making sure you are educating yourself. So it has definitely been a while since a lot of us learned about this topic. Even before I started teaching this program, I was like, man, it's been a bit. And I had to refresh myself on a couple things too. And that is perfectly okay to admit. It's okay to say, you know what? I forget a lot of this, especially if you were going through it today and being like, ooh, I forgot that. I forgot that. Okay, it's been a while for a lot of people. So if you have to kind of give yourself a little bit of a revision, no worries. Just make sure you are going through the right resources. So I have a couple here on the screen. These are all great. Amaze.org especially is a fantastic one if you want to use videos with your children. We use their videos in our own programs. They have every topic you can think of, things, more detailed videos about periods, more detailed videos on nocturnal emissions. It has this whole hodgepodge of different things, and it's separated into categories. So if you want more information like that, videos that you can even show to your kids too, just feel free to check them out first, make sure you think they're okay. But we use them and they're a great resource. Definitely recommend them. All right, next, start the conversation first. I know a lot of us like to believe that we are open books, that our kids can always approach us, but this is a tough subject. It really is for the average adult. When I talk about this with some adults, they even get a little bit giggly and red-faced, let alone little 10-year-olds in a classroom altogether. So sometimes they may not always want to come to you right away because it is embarrassing. It's the first time they've ever talked about this, maybe directly ever for some kids. So if you are waiting around and they don't seem like they're coming forward with anything, just talk to them first. Just say, hey, we heard you had this discussion at school today. Did you want to talk about it a little bit more? Did you have any questions for us? Kristen, I always love, Kristen has the best example. If you want to have more of a detailed talk with your children, take them for a drive because there's no one else around. You don't have to worry about little siblings barging in. Yeah, you're completely alone. They have nowhere else to go. They can't deflect and go to video games and things like that. So taking them for a drive and having this conversation, because even better, they don't have to look at you. You can all just look straight ahead while having this conversation. So I always love that one. So that's a really great way to do it if they're especially nervous or you're especially nervous too. All right, next, talk about it sooner rather than later, right? Unfortunately, with the internet nowadays, kids are being exposed to so much so soon. It amazes me how much these kids already know when I do this program. And they're still kids. It's not like having this conversation, they suddenly won't be children anymore. Trust me, if you heard the questions I get sometimes, you know they are absolutely still kids. However, it's better to talk about it sooner rather than starting to get those questions in their mind and thinking, oh, maybe I'll go on Google real quick and find some things out, and finding things that they shouldn't find out quite at that age. So it's always rather better to talk about it sooner rather than later. If this is something you want to kind of introduce them to before the program, or you want to talk about it afterwards, and now is a great time rather than later on when they really start getting more and more curious about other things past puberty. Next, make sure if you are having this discussion with your children, use body part language. I know it can be a little bit embarrassing for some of us, especially if you did not grow up in a house where you did use proper body language, but it is a really important thing to do because number one, it makes it less embarrassing when we do the program. And then if they happen to learn about this later on, the kids who have been exposed to this body part language, they have no problem with it. They're not quite as giggly. It's not quite as embarrassing for them. And then it normalizes it and lets them know, hey, this is normal. Those are parts of your body. It's not embarrassing to have these parts or say, hey, there's something like going on, and be able to use that language properly. And then if there is a medical situation ever, if they're using proper body part language, it's a lot easier to identify early on, especially by doctors and by nurses and other medical professionals. God forbid if there was a medical issue later on in life. So having that body part language is really, really great for development and helping them to ease them in to learning about the subject a little bit more in detail as they get older. It may be a little bit embarrassing for you. I've done this so many times that I am completely immune to it. However, if this is something you have to practice a little bit more with yourself on your own drive home, no worries. But using that body part language is really great for children this age and making sure they understand it is normal and these are the parts of our body. And finally, try your best to seem comfortable. I know this is a subject that may be brand new for a lot of you, talking about your children for the first time. However, these kids, they smell fear. They smell the fear on you. So if they know you're embarrassed and you don't want to talk about it, they're going to get embarrassed and not want to talk about it either. So even if you have to take that couple seconds and kind of shake it out, talk about it with your partner at home for a little bit and kind of make sure you are familiar with everything, just make sure you do that. Because if you're super embarrassed and you really don't want to talk about it, they're not going to want to either. So the more you seem comfortable, the more they are too. That's why when I do this program at the end, after we've gone through it all, and we've gone through all the big terms and the diagrams, after that, they all take this big deep breath and then they start asking the questions they've been really burning in their heads. So the more comfortable we are, the better it goes overall. Right? So that is everything for me when it comes to tips on the program and the actual program itself. Hopefully I went through everything. Like I said, that is exactly how I teach it, just a little bit more in detail with certain things. I don't throw in any extra slides or any other extra discussions. I try to answer everything as age appropriately as I can while still making sure to cover all the bases. And then again, they will get a separate talk with their phys ed teacher too. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if you guys have any questions for me or for Kristen, feel free to ask. We'll have a couple minutes to answer.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, I missed the beginning of the pre thing.
Sure. If you missed the beginning, no problem. We have been recording. So after this is over, we will send out a link. This way everybody can view the program on their own later on if there was something you missed out in the beginning and you want to view.
Awesome, thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Just to add on to that, when we send you the link, I'm also going to send you the matrix that just shows you what day LVHN will be at your child's school, and then also when the school-based discussion is going to happen, just so you have a heads up if you want to have a discussion leading up to that, that you know when those dates are slotted for.
Oh, and before I forget, I think we send out opt-out forms too. So if after this you are really like, you know what, I want to do it a little bit differently, I want to have this talk on my own, we send out opt-out forms. So if you don't want your child to view this program, it is optional.
So I'm sorry. So the way we do it in Parkland is you just send me an email, and we do it that way. We don't have an opt-out form. If you just send me an email, then we create like a table and send it to your principal, and they will know for that day to give them an alternate activity.
Are there any more questions? Kristen, any questions for you in the chat?
No, nothing to share with everybody. I am gonna share, I'm gonna send it along when we send the link. We have a program that we started this year for parents. It's called Smarter Parents, Safer Kids. And it's a awesome program. Most of them are done virtually. We are doing some in-person ones as well. And it deals with, you know, how to talk to your child about sexual development, what is normal, typical sexual development for children at various ages, starting from, 2 years old through probably 13 or 14. And, the safer kids part is, how to talk about and, teach your child about sexual abuse and things like that. So it's a really worthwhile program. I'll send the link. And then if anybody wanted to take part in that, they can sign up for it. It's been really successful.
Yeah, it's really good. They do a really great job with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I think another piece of advice, I'm trying to be like an old parent here, is, sometimes when they ask questions, we have a tendency, I know I do, to say more than they necessarily want to hear. I think that it's important, so they ask a question and you answer it. And then you wait and you see, was that enough? Is that good? You're good now? Usually they're good. If they're not, they'll ask you more. And so you kind of just follow their lead. Maggie's right. Keep, having them captive in the car is great. I'm sure you've already figured that out. And that never ends. So it's, it's a good opportunity. I know I found that they would kind of be more open. Again, they're coming from the back seat. They don't have to look at you, I guess. But yeah, so, it's definitely a parenting, hurdle, I guess, because it's not always that comfortable, but it is kind of interesting to see, the kids really, they ask some good questions, and they are a lot smarter, and pointed with their questions, which is great.
Yeah, in all the years I've been doing this, I've never had one truly inappropriate question. They always ask questions that are about the subject and that are genuine. There may be questions that kind of take me off guard a little bit, but it's because it's a word they've heard before or something that came up before, and they really just don't understand it. And again, I keep in mind age appropriateness. And I always tell them there is no bad question when it comes to this, because it's brand new. They've never learned about this before. For some kids they have. So we always keep that in mind. Yeah. All right. Well, if there are no more questions, thank you all for coming on. Really, really appreciate the turnout. Hopefully I explained everything okay. Again, we will upload this. So if you happen to miss a part or you want to rewatch a part, we will upload that and then we'll send out the link. So I hope you all have a good evening. Hopefully you got dinner cooking, and I can't wait to see your kids in the spring. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.